Hey guys, what's going on? So I'm bringing you the aftermath on the 1993 Buick Regal. So if you guys don't want to be spoiled about what happened last night, it was certainly quite the demo. So go ahead and watch the grandstands footage, the bone stock feature, and my heat, which is heat 2 of the bone stock heat at Brookfield Wheel Days 2024. And to get caught up to speed about what happened with this thing. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about it. Guys, we pulled out a win last night with this 1993 Regal, the Mighty Regal that could. Well, let me tell you, this thing just wouldn't give up. I thought for sure using that front end into that end of that PT Cruiser, I thought that was a losing battle for me. I thought for sure I was done. And I saw that PT Cruiser starting to bend more and more. I'm like, hey, this might actually be going well for me. And it just turned out that it just happened to go my way, and I couldn't be more thankful for it. Obviously, I'm thankful for everybody that congratulated me on a good run last night, and shout out to everybody who was in that feature. Put on a good show. I think we put on a good show last night, and I'm just glad to have been able to run with that many good people. You know. A lot of bad boys in there. I knew towards the end, I knew I was going to be a target. I thought once it came down to it and I saw how many were left, I'm like, oh man, they're just going to all team up on me. It's going to be 4v1. And it's not the way it really went down, and I was able to go around and just do what I needed to do to get down to the top two. And then once it was down to me and the PT Cruiser, man, his front was so clean and everything. I was like, oh man. Like I said, I know my radiator's gone. I knew that that bumper was V'd in and stuff because I could tell just from, I knew that I lost my radiator. I could feel the steam blowing from the radiator fan at first, and then obviously the radiator fan stopped working after just a tiny bit. So I used the front a little bit too early on, as far as I took a big wheel shot into a Camry, and I knew I had to take out those Camrys. Sure enough, that's what V'd in that bumper. And I knew it was going to happen. Actually, after the heat, it was in great shape. But after me hitting just a few times, it was all the way V'd in basically to the motor, and that's the way that those bumpers go. It just is what it is. That's why I had to run it, so I ran it. Let's go ahead and talk about the back end of this car before we really get into the meat of the front end there too much. The back end of this car, I gotta tell you, I was impressed. I know it doesn't look very impressive right now, but let me tell you, this thing took a lot of hard shots to this back end here, and it held up great, I think. The hood, or the trunk after the feature, or the heat, I should say, was definitely starting to come up and block my view. And after we talked a little bit with somebody, we decided, came to the decision, let's just pull the trunk off. It's just going to get in the way. It's not really supporting much, just because it was cut basically in half. You guys can actually see that bend all the way through it. That's where the supports were cut in it. It was just so flimsy and everything after that point, because it was supposed to be tucked into the trunk, and it would have worked great at that point. But unfortunately, that's just not the way I was able to run it because of the rules. So we just decided to pull it off. I think that worked really well. Obviously, the back end came straight in almost. Yes, this is kinked down now, but that's because the whole floor is pushed under and everything, like these Regals do after they bend, well, like that. So obviously that's starting to go down into the ground a little bit, but it's still off the ground by a good margin. I think that's part of the frame rail right there sticking down, and that's not a big deal. That's no big deal at all. Over here, we still got good structure on this side. What's interesting is this pillar's actually kicked like that. I don't recall ever seeing that happen before. And I know that they may have thought that this would have made a difference, but the answer was no, it really didn't. Where these bend, they don't bend down here. These pillars are pretty strong, and when they beat it down like a hammer, I knew that was not probably going to bend there. I always know that they bend up there, and that's exactly what it did on both sides. And actually, after the heat, it was starting to go in the roof. I saw it starting to kink on this side especially, and I was surprised that this side held up better than the passenger side, but that's just because I took harder shots on that passenger side there. But yeah, you see that floor has really come in. It's actually bent a lot like the Lumina. I know the lighting sucks, but I know you guys can probably barely see anything, but as you go across, it actually bent just like the Lumina did, except on the passenger side in this car. So kind of interesting. Fuel system worked great the entire night, had absolutely no issues with that. The car was running funky the entire time, but we already knew it was running funky. It actually was running funky when I pulled off the trailer initially. I don't know, it probably just had some stupid issue and I just didn't have time to fix it. I mentioned that in the day of the demo video yesterday. So, but overall I feel actually really good today. I was surprised with going into basically heat and basically 2 derbies in one day. I thought I'd be in a lot worse shape, but actually I feel great. I'm actually surprised. So let's get into the meat of this thing. What is the front looking like here? Well, cosmetically it looks terrible, you know, but let me tell you, it ain't so bad. But we got some real luck going on up front here. I mean, this is just pure luck in the middle here. And if you guys remember correctly, I think I may have mentioned it in the before video, but maybe I didn't. I was really worried about the oil filter that sits on the front of these 3.1 multi-ports. They are long oil filters and they stick out further than just about anything else on the motor. And as you guys can see down in there, once I zoom in a little bit, see the blue oil filter? Yeah, look at how hard that thing's bent. And shout out to the AC Delco filter. That sucker's holding. That sucker is holding oil, and if it is leaking, it's just barely leaking at all. It's still got full oil in this thing. I cannot believe that oil filter held up to that. I tell you what, if that was the Fram that was in here before, there's no way that was holding up. Not just because they're junk filters, but just because of the fact that that oil filter, the Fram, was a bit longer than the AC Delco, and I cannot believe that held up. My transmission lines are also smacked into. I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff going on in the middle of this car, and that's what I was worried about. But somehow, some way, a blessing from God, I think, they did not cut in either one of those. And let me go ahead and open the hood for you, and let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on underneath the hood, a little bit better sight. Alright, so now the hood's open, and you guys can see that this thing did take some pretty serious damage. We got some real bend in the core support here. It's pretty bad, but it's not as bad as the lower core support. Lower core support's actually very similar to what the Lumina did, all the way tucked up and under and in. Radiator fan obviously is into the motor hardcore. There's your oil filter down in there. You can just barely see it. Down in there, you guys can see the blue there, PF52. It's basically into the starter. It's hard into those transmission cooler lines, but luckily they seem to be holding. But other than that, the spark plug wires are fine. It appears, at least on the front. Over here, there were some bad noises going on and sparks and stuff. I think that all had to do with this line right here. I think this was contacting the alternator. You guys can see where it's shiny right there. I think it was contacting this hose clamp right there, and you guys can actually see where there's a little bit of a burn mark or something right there. And sure enough, it was sparking off of that. The alternator whacked the firewall a few times where that hose is. It was starting to beat down on the hose a little bit, which is not that surprising at all, since the motor is pushed just about as far back as what it could go before it started really having issues. There's a lot of important stuff on the back of this engine, which, you know, after I've ran 2 of these now, and I've ran the sequential fuel injection 3100s, I must say, even though I like the way that these I love the way that these have power. I don't know what it is about this engine, these engines right here, but these feel way more powerful as far as torque goes than the newer style 3100s. They're just these just seem a lot more torquey. But I tell you what, I would rather run the 3100 sequential fuel injection motor instead of the multi-port, rather than this flap top type motor, because honestly, guys, even though the power may be, I think, a little bit better, at least in the lower end RPMs and stuff like that, these motors are just, they have more weaknesses. There's too much going on in the back of the motor as far as important things, critical pieces. That oil filter is probably the worst thing about these 3.1 multi-ported motors. Although this thing really did well with heat, especially running on, I think, 5 cylinders. And let me show you guys why it's running on 5 cylinders. And I'm not going to start it because it is running on 5 cylinders. I don't want to hurt any more than what it already is. But let me see if I can get in there. I might not be able to get in there. But let's see. Maybe you guys can see it. Yeah, there he is. See the spark plug wire right there? That guy ain't attached to anything. He pulled out. He's like, nope, I'm done. So we'll go ahead and plug him back in, but I think once I do, it's spark plug number, let's see, what would that be? That would be 5, I believe. Yeah, 5 is not attached to anybody. And here he is. I think I can probably about pull him up here. Oh no, it's not 5. Let's see, which one is it? Is it 3? Yep, there it is. There's number 3. He's actually not even melted. I'm surprised. So I don't know whether this motor really did get hot, or he just started running like crap because it was losing power, because it was misfiring and stuff. I mean, it was definitely really hot too. But also my oil pressure gauge is flying all over the place, and I think that has to do with the fact that well, there's the oil pressure sensor. And by the way, if that gets whacked, it pours out more motor oil. And well, the sensor, or the wires there, kind of touching the radiator fan. And I'm not sure whether, I noticed it was bouncing all over the place. So this thing definitely has motor or oil pressure still. Maybe the oil filter might be even clogged or something. But we got to be just a little bit careful about how much we run this thing in its current state. But yeah, as far as the frame goes, she is kinked, as you guys would expect. Is kinked right there, and it is starting to go up. Ideal situation for a W body. I don't know if it's kinked right here. It might be a little bit kinked right there, actually, but she's starting to go up there, and right there, just ever so slightly, is kinked. And it actually might be kinked outwards on this side, because this side kind of kicked up and over just a tiny bit. So there's actually no seam rippage at the bottom, which is ideal. That's what you want. You don't want those seams to rip at the bottom. That's when they really become weak. With this thing starting to go up, that is ideal for these W bodies. So she's still got a lot of life in the front end, as long as I can get a bumper on these crush boxes. That's the problem, is you're not allowed. I might have to talk to the promoters of San Filippo, which is spinning wheels, and see if I'm going to be allowed to run, be able to cut off these crush boxes and just run it hard nose. But I don't think they're going to like that at all. So I'm going to have to figure out some things with these crush boxes. Man, they are trashed. So stay tuned, guys. There's more videos coming. I appreciate all you guys so much. Thank you guys for supporting me, especially my long-term fans. Thank you for supporting me over the years. I know it's been 3 long years since I have won a demolition derby, and to do in this one was a great time. It came with a good trophy. I'm sure you guys saw that with that big old spark plug. I really like that. That's really cool. And the wood grain, that's really cool too. And on top of that, a $1,500 check. So that's really good for bone stock, in case you don't know. So I'm very pleased. I couldn't believe this car pulled out the W last night. I really thought those bad boys do build really good cars, and actually there were a lot of good cars in that heat. The 8 Briggs car, that thing held up great. And you got a few other drivers that they just knew what they were doing, you know. So I was very pleased that I was able to wing this thing around and just get her to last. And thank you everybody congratulating me on a good run, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Stay tuned for more updates on the Regal and the Lumina. We're going to be trying to get these things to San Filippo 8 next week. Lumina's definitely running next week at San Filippo, so stay tuned. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye, everybody.